In this video, you're going to discover how you can overcome perfectionism so that you can take decisive action towards your desired outcome. So, what's the first step, right? The first step is to get curious. You need to start asking yourself, why do you think that you have this desire for things to be perfect, for things to be 100% before you actually allow yourself to move forward? For example, I've worked with clients that have dealt with this before, and some of the things that they've had to ask themselves are, is this perfectionism stemming from fear? Is it stemming from a fear of being judged by what other people might think of your actions or what other people might think of your work? Is it driven by a fear of success? As crazy as it sounds, there's a lot of people who subconsciously almost sabotage themselves because they are deep down, they're scared of what might happen if they actually do become successful, right? So the first step in all of this is just getting a genuine curiosity about where this stems from, and more importantly, why do you feel that you have this desire? Okay, so after that, the next thing that you need to do is identify the unmet need, right? So as humans, we don't do anything for no reason at all. There's a purpose behind everything that we do, even if we don't necessarily know it. And in this case, your perfectionism is driving some sort of need that is not being met. So you need to find out what that need is. Is it a need for certainty? For example, do you have a deep desire to need 100% certainty before you can move forward? Is it driven Is the unmet need fulfilling your ego? Does your ego need a big pat on the back, like all of ours does at some point or another? But getting to the root cause of what need is not being met in the context of your perfectionism is going to be pivotal. The third thing that we need to do is assess the impact and the value of the perfectionism. Okay, and what do I mean by that? There's some people who adopt this mentality that everything needs to be perfect, and that actually serves them, right? But there's other people who adopt that same mentality, and it actually is harmful to them. It causes more harm than good in many cases because it causes stagnation, and it causes a break in the opportunity to get momentum because they are not allowing themselves to consistently take action, which ultimately builds up momentum. So what you need to assess is, what value is the current way that you're thinking bringing you? What value does having this perfect ideal that you are committing yourself to achieving, how is that ultimately serving you, and how is it impacting your current actions and your current behaviors? And my guess would be, if you're watching this video, it is having some sort of negative impact that you're trying to change. So really take some time to assess what's going on there. Okay. And then the next step is, you need to ask yourself, is what you believe valid? You got to assess the validity of the thoughts that you're having. So when it comes to perfectionism, right, you have this idea, let's say that anything that you any work that you do, it needs to be as close to perfect as it can possibly be. And let's say you're telling yourself that that's the case because everyone else is going to critique your work and they'll see all the imperfections. This is just an example. Is that belief valid? And what I mean by that is, do you really need your work to be at 100% before you can actually execute it? Or would it being at 90% or 80%, would that suffice? That's something that you're going to need to answer for yourself. But a lot of the times when we have these thoughts, when we take a step back, they're not really valid. And that's something that you need to do for yourself, right? Is just assess the validity of the belief that you have around the requirement for what you're doing to be perfect and perceived as perfect, which, I'll give you a hint, you can think something's perfect, but you can't control if someone else is going to think something's perfect. So just take that into consideration, okay? The next thing that we're going to do, step number 5, is now we need to create a better alternative that actually suits your ideal mindset, and it's your ideal mindset, right? Not everyone can think the same way and get the same results. So I'll just give you an example. So I had a client and they struggled immensely with perfectionism, and we worked to get down to a framework that worked for them. And it was as simple as it is. I'm going to share it with you. And it's just a reframe of thinking of things in terms of excellence rather than perfection. And I'll give you the same example that I gave him, right? If you think about, I'm a basketball fan, so I'm going to give you a basketball example. Someone like Steph Curry, arguably the greatest shooter of all time, one of the greatest basketball players to ever live. If he is in a situation where there's a championship game, his team's down by 2, and let's say he shot 8 for 8 from the 3-point line, he's had a perfect game. If there's 5 seconds left and he has an opportunity to win the game, do you think he's going to take that shot if he's fixated on perfection? Now, compare that with if he's focused on excellence and his goal is to get another championship, but he's not fixated on going 100% from the field. Do you think that mentality would better serve his ultimate goal of getting a championship, which in this moment requires him to take a shot? Right. So I'll leave that with you to think about. Okay. But the point is, you need to create an alternative way of thinking, a framework, and a mindset that will allow you to make the decisions that you need in the moment that really align with what you're trying to accomplish. After that, the next step is going to be embracing perfection. Okay, I know it sounds simple, but you need to get to a place where you can genuinely see the beauty of the journey, because you're only going to be where you're at right now, right now, right? You're not, you can never return to the moment that you're currently in. So you need to find a way so that you can really just embrace the imperfection and the opportunity that brings you to grow and just continue to improve, because that really is a beautiful thing. Now I'm going to lead you to the last and final step, which is you need to commit to imperfect action. Okay. And one way that you can do that, and that I would implore you to start today, is pick one thing that will force you to work through imperfection. Okay. It can be something as simple as posting content. It can be something like releasing a video on YouTube. It can be something like, let's say you're an artist and you have a song that you know is not perfect. You feel like it's maybe 85% there, and you decide today that you're going to release that to the public, or that you're going to show it to a friend, right? Like, we can start small, but the point is you have to become more comfortable with being in imperfection on a consistent basis. Why? Because when you're in that space, that's when you get reps. When you get reps, you get data. When you get data, that's when you get to improve and iterate at a much faster pace than you otherwise would have if you were just sitting on the sidelines. And that's the place that we need to get you to, is consistently taking action. Okay, so again, just to summarize, the 7 steps are: 1, get curious; 2, identify the unmet need; 3, assess its value and impact on your current behaviors; 4, assess the validity of your belief around perfectionism; 5 is to create an alternative mindset framework that better suits you and the actions that you're trying to take; 6, you have to embrace the beauty of the journey; and 7, commit to taking imperfect action. If you can do these 7 things, I promise you're going to be in a much better place, and it will just be a matter of time before you start working through that perfectionism so that you can accomplish your goals.